In today's first readings, Psalm and Gospel, we have the examples of Lebanon cedars, palm trees, wheat, and the mustard tree to describe the workings of God and His kingdom. I'd like to share with you some other examples from my own gardening experience that may also help to explain the process of the growth and development of the kingdom of God. Brothers and sisters, have you ever prematurely picked fruit or vegetables that you've been tending for an extended period, and as a result they fail to deliver on taste and perhaps even nutrition? When I, for the first time ever, planted watermelon and Kent pumpkin, I had no idea how to tell when a watermelon was ready. 2 to 4 months, the websites tell you. Scratch the surface, knock on them to see if they're hollow, they say. There is lots of advice on how to know when they are ready, but on a few occasions my impatience got the best of me. Imagine cutting open a huge watermelon and finding it green inside. And not long after that disastrous premature picking of the watermelon, I picked a pumpkin of about 4 kilos, and instead of it being bright orange inside, it was a sickly looking yellowish colour instead. This is what it would be like gardening in the kingdom of God, and then not affording all the various plantings the necessary time for God's intervention to come to maturity in souls. In today's readings, we see God as the supreme gardener. We hear God speaking through the prophet Ezekiel, and Jesus himself using gardening parables and examples to get his point across about what the kingdom of God is like. You can almost imagine John writing another chapter in his gospel with Jesus proclaiming, "I am the true gardener of the world." So, brothers and sisters, what can we take from today's readings? What is God trying to tell us in his gardening analogies and parables? Ultimately, from the first reading, we see that God is the supreme being. For him nothing is impossible, and that he is the ruler over all. Though a cedar tree may be a sign of the strength and majesty of nature, before God it is nothing, for God can bring it down in an instant and raise it up somewhere else. In the psalm, God tells us that we will flourish like the palm tree and grow like a Lebanon cedar if we remain with God. Being faithful to the kingdom of God will be the source of our strength and growth. Coming to the gospel, we can see the interplay between grace, i.e. God's actions, and nature, i.e. our actions, in the building up of the kingdom. Along with the need to work with God in the process is the sense of him teaching us patience, trust, and hope. Fruitfulness of life will come from us being patient, that is, waiting for the right time to act, or in my case, picking the watermelons or pumpkins. Acting too quickly can disrupt, or even worse, destroy God's plans for our lives and the lives of those who have been entrusted to our care. Secondly, he's teaching us to trust in his providence. While the farmer is asleep, the wheat or mustard tree continues to grow and develop. There are certain things we just can't do or control, no matter how much we may try. We live in a world now where man has become so arrogant to think he's the master of creation and of life and death. The role doesn't belong to us. Finally, Jesus teaches us to hope. Though the mustard seed was the smallest of all seeds, nevertheless God caused it to grow into the biggest of all shrubs. I once told one of the small boys in grade 5 that I know a man who was the shortest in his class at primary school but is now 6 foot 4 inches. Nothing is impossible to God, so a lesson for us is to always hope. And what will be the outcome of all of this? In the first place, we need to recognize God's primary role in creation, in life and death. We must remain patient in times of trial and distress and seeming emptiness. We must continue to trust God even when it seems he's doing nothing to help us. And we must never lose hope that God can turn a situation on its head in an instant. Going back to that unripe Kent pumpkin that I picked prematurely, I can give you an example of this. As it turns out, all was not lost, as the housekeeper of the parish at the time, in her culinary expertise, managed to cook it in a way that it ended up tasting quite delicious. And so too, God can make good our stuff-ups. When we do stuff things up through impatience or lack of trust or hope, it is not the end of the story. As long as we turn around and seek God's forgiveness, he can easily surprise by providing what is lacking in our own humanity. So, brothers and sisters, let us do our bit, working together with God, nature working together with and never in opposition to grace. Let us be patient, trusting and hopeful in all our spiritual gardening endeavours. And if we do this, our souls will flourish like the palm tree. We will bear abundant spiritual fruit that will last. Our crops of good works will be prolific, and our lives will be like the mustard tree, providing shade and shelter for all those other souls that God has entrusted to our care.